All right. So, peace and blessings, brothers and sisters. Once again, it's the Khazmozentric Myztik coming at you today with this series that I want to do on understanding Kemetic culture, Egyptian culture. I was online and I noticed that there's not a lot. There are teachings in other brothers and sisters that discuss this, but there's not a lot. And so I just wanted to add my voice to the conversation. What I'm going to do for you today is give you a simple understanding of the Pert Im Heru, or the Book of Coming Forth by Day, or the book on becoming a being of light. So for a deeper understanding of this by brothers and sisters that's been involved in the consciousness, uplifting of the consciousness of their community through Kemetic teachings, I would recommend studying Baba Heru. I recommend studying Seba Jab, Muata Ashby, and his wife. I would recommend studying Shechem or Shechem, Ranif Ramin, all blessings and respect as far as getting a deeper understanding. So this is the beginning. I hope you really kind of, appreciate this conversation because it helps to shed some light on a topic that not a lot of people know about, okay? So when we talk about the Book of the Dead, right, it's a misunderstanding to kind of think of it as a book. In today's modern day age, we're spoiled, right? When we think of books, we think of something like this, right? We got a book that's got a spine. All of the pages are neatly inside of it. You know what I'm saying? It's got a title, everything like that, right? That's not how books were back in the day. So our books, this book that I just showed you right here, that's a descendant of what is commonly called a codex. Now, a codex is a type of book that was used for thousands of years. So what a codex is, it's like parchment or papyrus that was folded, folded and then cut to produce the pages. Then like groups of these pages were put together and they were sewn on the edge, and that produced like a rudimentary book. This book then was covered with like wood or leather to protect the pages inside. So in ancient Kemet, many of the teachings were written on papyrus. So you have that going on. And that papyrus scroll, now to make a papyrus scroll, it was intense, right? First, the papyrus had to be harvested, had to be cut, trimmed, then it had to be beaten with a mallet, right? And then it would come out into these little thin strips of papyrus. But if you had just one strip of papyrus that was too thin, so what they would do was they would take 2 strips of papyrus and nail them in mallet and beat them together. And then inside the papyrus, there's like this resin-like material. And so that resin that was a gooey, sticky substance. And as the 2 pieces of paper were pounded together, they would stick together, right? And this would create your papyrus strip. It would be real sturdy, extremely sturdy. And that was sturdy enough for the scribes to write on, right? So that's the origin of the original papers that was used in ancient Egypt in the back in the day, right? So now it's called the Book of the Dead, right? But that's not correct. That was a name that has like a German origin, and the German name of it was Totenbuch, which is believed to come from the Arabic phrase Kutab al-Kumwat, which meant the books of the dead. And basically, the Arabic Egyptians in the modern area, that's the name that they gave the papyruses that they would find in the tombs. However, Kemites, ancient Egyptians, our ancient African ancestors, called it Ta-Medu in Pert Im Heru, right, or the Book of Going Forth by Day. It was also called Doral Nu Pert Im Heru, which are the teachings going forth by day. So I'm really, honestly, this can be interpreted as teachings on becoming light, or becoming an enlightened being, or becoming a Heru. because that term Heru can have many different meanings depending upon the determinative that followed the word. So we'll discuss that more in the classes that I'll be giving and how to decode the hieroglyphs. So if you're interested in that, you can tune in, and that'll be really great. I'm really trying to lock down a good schedule on that. But I really want brothers and sisters to kind of approach understanding Kemetic philosophy and spirituality in a good way. So anyway, this teaching, along with other teachings, they could be found on anything that the Kemetic scribes could get their hands on to write. So you would see these teachings on bandages, bandages that would wrap brothers and sisters as they transitioned in life, coffins, bricks, whatever. Everywhere that they could be written, they were written. They've even been found on the bandages of people that had transitioned, So, and then honestly too, they found passages of the book kind of on the person's body itself. So, I mean, these people were intensely spiritual. So these teachings were actually groups. They were actually groups of like smaller phrases or text put together. They were individual teachings. You know what I'm saying? They were sayings like psalms within the Egyptian cultural context, right? So each passage, each phrase was self-sufficient on its own. It had its own theme, its own structure. One very famous scene was the weighing of the heart. So this is a scene that takes place in the judgment hall of, and it's found in teaching that's commonly labeled teaching 125 of the Book of the Dead, right? Here, the heart of the person is weighed against the feather of Ma'at in the judgment hall of Asar, right? So, but what this represents and what this is representative of is the fact that your passions, your emotions, your desires, that's within your heart, So too, inside your heart are your sins, are the remnants of your sins. They lie inside your heart as well. So they exist as pangs upon your soul. Whenever you think about it, or whenever you come across something that you've done, it is a pang remembering. And so when you pass, this is what you carry with you. And the judgment scene is a representation of your heart being weighed by your individual God's self-consciousness within to determine what type of life you lived and what type of rewards or punishments you have earned. Not necessarily punishments, but what type of life have you earned, after your physical, life. So this scene in and of itself you could go on and on and on with the teachings on that scene. Anyway, the origins of the Ral Nupert Im Heru. Most people try to put it with the pyramid text, but the pyramid texts were actually found. So it's really in the far, far distance past. Like we're talking about pre-dynastic times. I'm not talking about aliens. All right, we're not doing that because that's a conversation that's related to the idea that Africans could not have created such great civilizations. We need to get off of this alien conversation and understand that these were Africans that created this great civilization that we have. So when we first come across them in the pyramid text, they were codified as utterances or teachings, which when understood and practiced, they led you to a higher state of awareness and attunement to the world. Now, in the text, this was referred to as gaining power over the gods and goddesses within yourself and then becoming a glorified, risen soul, right? An enlightened being. Now, the age of the text is something talked about. So they were said to be found by a person. They were said to be found by a person in the first dynasty, not created, but found. So we know that they're extremely old and they go into the far distant past. So, and then the pre-dynastic times, conservatively, we can even talk about 5000 BC. But anyway, traditionally, the pyramid texts are viewed as early versions of the Pert Im Heru, and they seem to be instructions like they're a ritual that the king performs certain rites and then gains power over the natural forces in the afterlife. So in the afterlife, or astral life, that's fine. Mystically, this refers to the fact that people Mystically, this refers to the fact that people not only practice these teachings in the afterlife, but during life. It was to gain power over the forces of nature while alive, to become an Ak, or glorified spirit. So the book isn't really, the book is not really for those who have transitioned. It's also for those who are still currently living. Now, one of the reasons that we find these teachings on the walls of the pyramids is not because they were reserved for the elite of society. These were general teachings that were held throughout society. Writing, though, back in the day was reserved for the elite, and this was before writing skills were widespread. So what we see taking place inside Kemetic society is the development of the writing industry, more and more distribution of wealth, and other advancement that's allowed for more people to have these inscriptions written in their tombs. And so it's not just like the elite of society or only the king became the god, right? These were teachings that the people wanted inscribed on their tombs in their funeral. This is what they're reading. You know how in our funerals we read something and it's like, oh, this is how this person lived, this is how we glorified them. Anyway, there were several versions of the Pert and Heru. There was the tradition of Anu, and that was written on the pyramids of the early Per'as, or the kings of ancient Kemet. These are known as the pyramid texts, and we can say this is roughly 5,000 to 3,000 BCE. Then there was the tradition of Waset, which was like dynasties 18 to 20. And now these are the teachings that can be found written on papyri and in Medu Neter. These writings, this was the time where we see that these writings were divided into chapters with titles and everything else, but still they weren't given any definite order. They weren't really given an order until the Ptolemaic tradition. Now the Ptolemies, they were the Greek invaders of Kemet. They were the descendants of Alexander's generals. And here we see the chapters were arranged in a definite order and written in both hieroglyphs and hieratic, which is like cursive hieroglyphs. So, brothers and sisters, that's it for part one. I hope you enjoyed this. In part two, I'm going to discuss the philosophy within the Book of the Dead, the Pert Im Heru, and then we'll go on from there. If you like this, let me know. Hit that like button, share it, and then join me for further discussions on Kemetic society and how it relates to African-centered traditions. Peace.